Hey, my friends, we will be right back to the show. But I have a question for you. Are you struggling with the impact of childhood trauma? Well, know that you're not alone. I'm here to let you know that I'm starting a brand new weekly coaching group that includes a year of life coaching, accountability, support, habit and goal setting, and more. I'm starting a waitlist for the group right now, and I'm only taking a handful of people. And I'll let you know that through this personalized coaching, we'll work together to help you understand how your childhood trauma has shaped your beliefs, behaviors, emotions, and will help you create a roadmap for healing and growth. Right now, you can schedule an absolutely free coaching session with me and get put on the wait list if you go to thinkunbroken.com. My friends, it's your time to turn your trauma into triumph, breakdowns into breakthroughs, and become the hero of your own story. And I'm here to support you in doing that. Just go to thinkunbroken.com to register for a free coaching call with me and to get put on the wait list for the brand new weekly coaching program. We'll be right back to the show. But before we do, I want to tell you about today's sponsor, factormeals.com, where if you go to factormeals.com/unbroken50 and use the code unbroken50, you can get 50% off your first order. That's factormeals.com/unbroken50. If you're like me and you are a person who is busy trying to create a life, heal, work on their health, wealth, and relationships, and not to mention deal with the day-to-days of normal life, you do not have time to be going to the grocery store and trying to figure out what you're going to cook every single day of the week. In fact, one time I did the math and I realized I was spending over 15 hours a week at the grocery store and cooking. When I added Factor, I got to use that time for myself, for my family, for my friends, for my community, and for my business. And so if you're in the place where you need some more support in the kitchen, head to factormeals.com/unbroken50 and use the code unbroken50 to get 50% off. Hey, my friends, we will be right back to the show. But I have a question for you. Are you struggling with the impact of childhood trauma? Well, know that you're not alone. I'm here to let you know that I'm starting a brand new weekly coaching group that includes a year of life coaching, accountability, support, habit and goal setting, and more. I'm starting a waitlist for the group right now, and I'm only taking a handful of people. And I'll let you know that through this personalized coaching, we'll work together to help you understand how your childhood trauma has shaped your beliefs, behaviors, emotions, and will help you create a roadmap for healing and growth. Right now, you can schedule an absolutely free coaching session with me and get put on the wait list if you go to thinkunbroken.com. My friends, it's your time to turn your trauma into triumph, breakdowns into breakthroughs, and become the hero of your own story. And I'm here to support you in doing that. Just go to thinkunbroken.com to register for a free coaching call with me and to get put on the wait list for the brand new weekly coaching program. One of the really devastating and heartbreaking truths about people who have traumatic childhood experiences, for people who grew up in homes that maybe aren't so forgiving, for people who suffer at the hands of bullying or being mistreated, that they start to think that their story doesn't matter. When in fact, one of the most important things that we have is our story and the decision and the choices that we make to not only let that story not own us, but for us to own it and to use our story to make the world a better place. And that's very much the truth for today's guest, my friend, Coach Jimmy Nelson, who Jimmy Hayes Nelson, aka Coach Jimmy, has been a high performance business coach for over a decade. And Jimmy's skills have allowed him to connect personal stories to products and services so that people can create the life that they want to have. I won't get into Jimmy's full story because I want you to listen to the show, but he faced tremendous amount of bullying, being overweight, having people not believe in him, finding himself at the brink of financial collapse, and then one day making a decision to become the hero of his own story. Jimmy's a great friend of mine, someone that I look up to in the world, someone who I think is an amazing leader, who's truthful, who's honest, and whose Texas draw will definitely get your attention. So, my friends, without further ado, let's get into the show. You're listening to the Think Unbroken podcast, where our mission is to give you the tools to heal, overcome the past, get unstuck, and become the hero of your own story. I'm your host, Michael Unbroken, author, speaker, coach, and advocate for adult survivors of childhood trauma. It's our mission to end generational trauma in our lifetime through education and information. Thank you so much for being here, being a member of the Unbroken Nation, and learning how to become unbroken. Please do me a favor. It would mean the world to me if you take 30 seconds, leave a review for the show on iTunes so that other people can find this information, and check out our YouTube channel if you just search Think Unbroken. Thank you for being here. We'll see you in the show. Hey, what's up, Unbroken Nation? Hope that you're doing well wherever you are in the world today. I'm very excited to be back with you with another episode with my friend, Coach Jimmy Hayes Nelson. Jimmy, my friend, what is going on in your world today?
Life is good in Dallas, Texas, and I have been looking forward to this conversation for a very long time.
Man, I'm so happy that you're here. You and I connected a few months ago at a speaking event. I followed your career a little bit over the last few months. I love your effort, your energy. I see you in the gym all the time. I see you like doing the things you want to do. And I think that it's really incredible that you've put yourself in a situation to be successful in your life. And I would love for a little bit of context here. If you could tell us high level your story, your background, and how you got to where you are today.
Absolutely. I was thinking about having this conversation with you and realizing like, oh, I don't know how much of my story I've shared with you in our brief time together. I obviously got to hear you speak. And I was like, okay, so where did this start, Jimmy? Like, where do you go? And this whole thing, if you believe it or not, it started in the first grade. So in the first grade, I grew up in West Texas, in Lubbock, Texas. So if you know where Texas Tech University is, that's where I grew up. And I was thinking, okay, Jimmy, where'd this whole thing start? And it started in the first grade, Murphy Elementary, Lubbock, Texas. And it was around Christmas time. It was a little before this, and my entire elementary school was doing like a Christmas play. And each grade had like a different like presentation they would do. In my first grade class, we were going to do the musical number called Too Fat for the Chimney. And it was an epic story about how Santa Claus was going to be able to like deliver presents because he couldn't get down the chimney because he was too fat for the chimney. And this was like the early 80s. So this is before there was like a childhood obesity epidemic. I was the fat kid in my class, like solo me. And when I think about it, I think I probably was the only one that I knew whose parents were divorced. And I don't know that was fact. I just knew that. And so there was a lot of confidence in little first grade Jimmy. But I thought, dude, this is it. We're having this musical number. It's about fat Santa Claus. Like, this is my time to shine. And they gave that role of Santa Claus to my best friend, Justin Martin, who was the skinniest kid in class. And they put a bunch of pillows around him and put him in a Santa outfit. And the rest of my friends, they dressed up like Jane Fonda 1980s, like jazzercise with like the headband and the leg warmers. And so all my little support system, they're all upstage, like away from the audience, right? And they're doing like literally like a jazzercise step routine, trying to get Santa in shape. Little fat insecure Jimmy, my dear sweet granny, rest in peace. She made me like this onesie feety pajamas thing where like your feet go in and you zip it up and it has the stocking cap and the drop bottom in the back. They pushed me out to the edge of the stage to sing the solo Too Fat for the Chimney. And I'm like, I am terrified because I'm looking at all my peers. I got no confidence. I don't know how I got here. And I just kind of take this deep breath and it's just like, he's too fat for the chimney, too fat for the chimney. And dude, I saw people smile and their eyes light up like yours just did. And it was like the first time I got some kind of like positive reinforcement from a peer group. And I look back and I'm like, oh, that was probably the first time I knew what I was designed to do was be in front of audiences to get an emotional reaction. But what happens is a lot of times when we realize what our gifting is, that first time we ever experienced it, we immediately make a list of reasons why we can never do it. And that was what I started with. I was like, you're fat. There's probably other people that sing better. You've come from a broken home. And it was just like this list continued to build up. And what it did is it really planted a seed of resentment in me as I got older. I was trying to pursue this dream of being in front of people, even though I was really nervous to be in front of people, like to the point where I really had like a physical leg twitch. Like this thing, like I know I'm good at, but I'm terrified to do. I have no self confidence. I developed what I would call like a victim mentality. I was like really good at explaining why other people were having success, why other people were chasing a dream that I knew I had a gifting for. And it wasn't complaining. It was, let me just, of course they're doing better they're going to the school. I can't even get to that school. We can't afford to even have me audition to go to that school. Or, oh, of course they're doing better. I'm holding down two jobs. Their parents are paying for things. And so I kept trying to chase this dream, but I continued to put weight on and I continued to have this victim mentality and this really toxic mindset to where I found myself in Florida. So every time there would be people around me that things weren't going well, I physically would move. Like I went from Dallas to Oklahoma, Oklahoma to Florida because it was other people's faults. But these issues kept following me. And I was in Florida and my mom called and said, Jimmy, we're back here they'd moved to Dallas by this point where I am now. And my mom says, "Hey, man, we're worried about you because we're seeing all these bills stack up. We see you've maxed out 3 credit cards. We know things are struggling. We think you should move home." And I wanted to fight. I wanted to be noble and be like, "No, I'm chasing this dream." And I just surrendered. And I was like, "She's right." And I gave up. And so I found myself 100 pounds overweight, a 3-time college dropout, moving back in with my parents at like 22. And that sucked. And I really that dream, that little Jimmy dream died because I came back here and I stopped pursuing that altogether, and I was just waiting tables and bartending. And I remember and I was, like, sleeping into, like, 11. Like, I'd wake up and it was just like, "How do I get to the end of this day?" It was like, I'm not even nothing to be excited about, it's just survival mode. And I remember there was one day I got up late, so I'm running late already to, like, get ready for work, and I jump in the shower upstairs at my parents' house, wrap the towel around me. And normally I don't spend a whole lot of time in front of the mirror, 100 pounds overweight in a towel. But for whatever reason that day, I just stopped and I didn't really respect the guy looking back at me. And I legit thought, who's going to love this? Like, Jimmy, this is your life. Like, you're no longer a kid, you're an adult. And I always tell people that was my shift moment. Like, the heavens didn't open up. There wasn't like a lightning strike and like Coach Jimmy was born. But I actually keep a sticky note here to remind me all the time of this idea of, are you willing to be willing? And that was that moment of, Jimmy, are you willing to be willing to think differently? Are you willing to be willing to get some feedback, to try something else? Because I was really good at telling you why something wasn't gonna work before I ever tried it, or why I wasn't good at taking feedback. I was not very coachable. And that was the shift. And what's crazy, and I know you know this, is when you make that mental shift of, hey, I'm at least going to be open to some things I've really been shut off or defensive about. It's amazing how the universe shows you a bunch of stuff that's been around you, resources, people, things that have been around you the whole time. You just weren't open to it. And that's where that shift started. And that led me to, there was a guy I was already waiting tables with who was losing weight, and I would always just been too prideful, too much ego or whatever to ask him, what he was doing. And he introduced me to in-home workouts where I started taking baby steps. And it was like these little series of baby steps. It wasn't, I love the fact that we're doing it this time at the beginning of the year, because I feel like people think they have to overhaul everything of these resolutions. And I'm like, and it's this all or nothing mentality, right? Like, it's got to be 100% or nothing. And we think we're really noble by saying, oh, if I can't give it 100%, I don't wanna do it. And we think that's really noble, and I think what it really is procrastination and fear in disguise. And, but that's what started that, man, is those little baby steps. And now I look up and I've been in business for 15 years, obviously took off the weight, haven't put it back on, and been rewriting my story ever since that day in the mirror, and just helping other people rewrite their story as well, man, just like you
Yeah.
are.
It's beautiful, man, and we have so many parallels in our journey together. Myself being 150 pounds overweight,
Mhm.
smoking 2 packs a day, drinking myself to sleep, working at a fucking Chili's, you
Yeah,
know what I mean? The whole 9.
it's very similar.
Yeah, and then having this moment where, my entrepreneur endeavor as a photographer was starting to take off, but everything else around me was failing, my relationships, my health, my self-esteem. And
Mhm.
I went and I looked in the mirror one day after a suicide attempt, just being like, "What the fuck are you doing, man?
Yeah.
And like your sticky note, my question to myself was, what are you willing to do to have the life that you want to have?
Good.
And the answer was no excuses, just results. Because the truth about it is, up until that moment, like you and like so many people, like, and I think the thing I want folks to hold on to here is like, we're not anomalies. We are not outliers. Like, this happens because we made decisions. And in the shift of my life, I think the greatest thing that happened is I was just tired of my own bullshit.
Yeah.
I just refused to continue to be that victim. You said something so important that I think when this sits with people and you hear this, and it will have so much weight in your life that it'll transform you. And the words that you said were, I realized I wasn't a child anymore. And I
Mhm.
think that that is such an incredible revelation. What I'm really curious about here, Jimmy, is talk through what that meant for you, what that was like, and the weight that that's carried in your life.
Yeah, it's funny because it wasn't that people hadn't tried to help me before then. There were people that had encouraged me like, "Hey, Jimmy, let's go. Let's get off your ass. Let's do these things." And I just wasn't open to it. And I think for me, that moment in the mirror, that moment of like, who's gonna love this? It reminds me of one of my favorite stories. Les Brown tells it. And he talks about this old man and a dog sitting on a patio, like out on the porch. And this little kid walks by and the dog's like moaning and groaning and making all sorts of noise. And the kid stops and goes, hey, sir, what's wrong with your dog? And he's like, oh, he's laying on a nail. And he's like, well, why doesn't he move? He goes, oh, it doesn't hurt enough to move. It just hurts enough to moan and groan. And that's where I had been in my life until that moment. I was real good at telling you what I was dissatisfied about. I was really good at explain. I wasn't complaining in my head. It wasn't complaining. It was just explaining, rationalizing, um, justifying. And I think we all can fall in that trap that sometimes we do just have to stop and go, cool, Jimmy, if you're not happy with an area in your life, what are you going to do about it? I do that with the people I work with all the time. I said, you can vent to me. We can come, we can talk. You can vent all of that. And I'm going to listen and I'm going to empathize as best I can. But they know what I'm going to ask at the end is like, man, that sucks. That really does. I understand. Cool. What are we going to do about it? And up until that moment, I was never willing to do anything. I was never willing to do something different to get something different. And for me, it all started with my mindset. In fact, I tell people the biggest battle of my entire life, and I don't know if you feel this way as well. It was not the 100-pound weight loss. It's not keeping it off for over a decade. It is the battle that I choose. The battle that I choose to fight every morning with my head. I have to attack my mind every day before my mind attacks me because old Jimmy still lives in here. He's really loud at times too. And so for me, the way I do it, my hack, I know they tell people like, don't grab your phone first thing in the morning, but I'm gonna give you an exception to this rule. I found that if I waited to see what kind of day I was gonna have, right? Old Jimmy was really noisy. In fact, I had one of my really early mentors that I was trying to build my business and I was doing the things and I wasn't having the right success. And he's like, Jimmy, what are you reading? I'm like, bro, I dropped out of college 3 times. I don't do a whole lot of reading. He's like, what are you reading? What are you listening to? And I was like, I don't know. I get up like ESPN, the radio, I'm in silence, whatever. But I realized I was always playing defense. It was, oh, my mindset, that noisy chatter would get at me, and then I had to play defense on it or just already be defeated before the day even got started. So this is what I do. When I wake up first thing in the morning, before I roll over, before I barely open my eyes, I grab my phone and go to YouTube and they have like all these like motivational montage videos of like name your speaker. It's like Tony Robbins and Les Brown and Jim Rohn and Mel Robbins and Shalene Johnson and Gary Vaynerchuk and the list goes Tony Robbins, all these people, the list goes on and on and on. And so what I found is when I woke up in the morning from like stumbling to the bathroom, getting dressed, grabbing coffee or getting ready for my workout, there was like this hidden anywhere from like 10 to 30 minutes in the morning. So instead of trying to find extra time to do something, I was like, and it's funny that I go to YouTube because I don't actually physically half the time even watch the video. I just need something speaking life into me first thing in the morning. I need something to fill my bucket, to fill my cup because we're all really good at being our own worst enemy. So it just gave me something else to focus on. besides whatever was gonna rattle around in my brain, and I'm like, "I'm gonna start my day on offense every day," and that's made the biggest difference.
Man, that's fascinating to me, and even in this moment, I'm thinking to myself, I wanna actually try this to see the impact that it has because I'm anti-phone, but I'm open, right? And I think that's one of the really important things is kind of, like, seeing what happens because when those videos pop up, and I'm with you, man, you get the right one, and you're just like,
Let's
"Fucking
go,
fuck it,"
right, yeah.
right? And typically when I start my mornings, it's very much silence, meditation, contemplation, consuming personal development. Like, maybe it's the same thing because I go to audiobooks for 30 minutes
Mhm,
every single day or a Tony Robbins training, something of that nature.
sure.
And so, but I wonder if there's a speed shift, right? You know what I mean? And so I'm very curious to try that. Why do you think that, we have so many people who are listening to this who probably resonate, who with both of our stories and various parallels, and they go, I know they're asking themselves right now, like, what is the secret? Like, what are these guys doing that I haven't figured out? From my perspective, I don't believe there is a secret. I think
Yeah.
the truth is it's decision making. But outside of that, Jimmy, and maybe that is the answer, but I'm curious from your perspective, like, how do you take control over your life again?
Yeah, I had a acting mentor a long time ago that I think when he told me this, it was in an acting context, but it's now become really a mantra. And he said, "Jimmy, until you fall in love with the process more than the performance," he's like, you're never gonna win in this long term." He's like, "You have to fall in love with the process, not just the performance, not just when people are clapping, just not when you're on stage." And I'm like, "That's so true in life. There is no secret, but I have fallen in love with the idea of getting 1% better every day." And it is a balancing act. We can be really hard on ourselves and think, "Gosh, we're so far away." But how can you celebrate 1,000% who you are today and look at getting 1% better as an exciting thought? Not as punishment, not because there's something wrong with you, because we've been given the gift to continue to grow at we're the only creatures that get to a tree can only be a tree. Your dog can only be a dog. Like we have the opportunity to continue to evolve each day. Now on the flip side, we're also the only creature that doesn't always grow to its potential. A tree's not going to stop growing until it gets to its potential. And I think for me, so many people that I work with are trying to recapture some former version of themselves, right? Oh, I peaked in high school or I looked amazing and I feel like life was rocking and rolling in college or my early 20s because they weren't living with some of the they weren't living with their decisions, they weren't living with the consequences immediately. It was like delayed, right? We think about the compound effect and the things we do today maybe don't show up for 6 months or 2 years or whatever. Man, I grew up looking at the consequences of my decisions early on in my life. So I feel like what keeps me going is chasing this version of myself that I've never seen. Right? I just turned 44 2 days after Christmas, and I still feel like I'm just getting started. There's this version of me. I've heard Matthew McConaughey say it all the time when he was a kid, somebody asked who was his hero, and he's like, "I need a few days." And he came back, he's like, "I know who my hero is. It's me 10 years from now." And that same friend came to him 10 years later. He's like, "Cool, so are you your hero?" And he's like, "I'm not even close." And it's this idea, I think when we talk about personal growth, it's really easy for people to look at it as this chore, as this punishment, as and yes, it can get really tedious. And yes, it is a bit of a to do list, but the reward on the other side of this little bitty movement every day. If you've ever read The Compound Effect by Darren Hardy or The Slight Edge by Jeff Olson. They're kind of the same book, but it's this idea of if you and I, if we use food as an example and you and I go sit down and you have a really healthy, amazing meal with like salad and a chicken breast and some rice or something, and I eat two large pizzas, well, we don't look any different today. But if every time we make a tiny little step, little step, little step, and you look up and those two people are going to be vastly apart from each other. And it happens in life all the time. So we think, oh, this idea of, investing 10 to 20 minutes in the morning in my mindset of moving my body today. Does it really matter? Does it really matter if I journal today? Does it really matter if I read 10 pages of a good book? Well, does it matter in the grand scheme of things today? Maybe, maybe not. But every day You've done it. I've done it. You let a bad day become a bad weekend, become a bad 2 weeks, becomes a bad 6 months, and you look up and it's 6 years later, and you're like, "How the hell did I get here?" And it's what it's what we do every day, you know? And so I've just fallen in love with this process of how can I get a little better each day? And then just sharing this. It really has become a passion from a guy. And this is, it shows that we can change. I can't change you. When they say people don't change, that's a lie. I am literally a different animal than I used to be. But it was a little baby step at a time. It wasn't trying to overhaul everything at once. And I think that's what's created the longevity of this.
And the reality is, like, we are adaptation machines. I think Tom says it best. Tom Bilyeu says it best. He goes, "Human beings are the ultimate adaptation machine." You have so much capacity to create this massive shift in your life. And it's not like, I think it's really interesting because people will measure themselves against other people and say, "I can never have that." And the thing that I've sat with that hits really home for me is I don't want what you have. I want what I want.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important in this process, but to get there, like, Jimmy, you and I share a parallel. We love being on stage. Like,
Yeah.
for me as a kid, like, I wanted to be Tommy Lee or Jay-Z, like, that's it. And so
Awesome.
I never played fucking instruments and I never wrote rap lyrics, and so that didn't happen for me. But in this context, it has, as being a leader and speaking power into people and having this really difficult conversation. But with what you do, like, I don't want Jimmy's life at
Yeah.
all. Like, your life is probably amazing for you. And
Yeah.
I think what's really important for people is stop keeping up with the Joneses, stop measuring yourself against other people, and recognize that you have to have just a massive sense of clarity about who you are. But I will say this because I know it to be true: getting that clarity is one thing, making it come to fruition is another.
Yeah.
And what I'm curious about, I'm going to say a single word, and I want to know what role this word plays in your life, because I think it's the catalyst to everything. And that word is fear.
Mm.
What role does fear play in your life? Hey, Unbroken Nation, we'll be right back to the show, but I wanted to let you know that you can grab a copy of my first book, Think Unbroken: Understanding and Overcoming Childhood Trauma, for free. If you go to book.thinkunbroken.com, you can download the PDF ebook version of the book and get everything that I know about the baseline of healing trauma for free, downloaded to your email right now. Just go to book.thinkunbroken.com to download your copy of Think Unbroken: Understanding and Overcoming Childhood Trauma for a PDF for your phone. Again, that is book.thinkunbroken.com.
The fear, the role that fear plays in my life is being told so often growing up, "Jimmy, you have so much potential." And I know they meant that as a compliment, and it haunted me and still haunts me because it's the fear that that potential that people saw in me growing up, the fear that people see something in me and go, "Oh, you could be great. You have tendencies of greatness in you." The fear of not living up to whatever potential God put in me frightens me. The fear to not get everything out that's inside me into this world, or times that I've muted myself, or I feel like, "Oh, I can't be that direct. I can't be 100% me." And then I'm like, but what if that was the impact you were gonna have? The fear that drives me is not reaching that potential, is not becoming that guy that I've been chasing now, for 15 years or however long this journey has been going on. I think that's the role now that fear does is what I think we've all heard the parallel about, like, when you get to heaven and there's this idea that there's the there's the you that was gonna be designed, and, like, how close do you look to that version of you, and I think that's what fear plays in me is that I'm going to leave some untapped potential, and it's not so much, and I know that can sound really ego driven. Let me be really clear about this. It's not about how awesome can Jimmy be. I feel if I don't reach my potential, there are people that I won't get to impact. The reason I got up this morning and did all when I filled my cup today, because I knew I was having this conversation with you. I know I was going to be in front of an audience. And I'm like, in order for me to have the impact, somebody's going to hear this. Somebody's going to see this or hear this. And this may be that shift for them. And if I didn't show up today and do everything I needed to do, it wasn't even today, the last week, it all, it is a compound effect. What happens if I wasn't at my best today and that person that may be at the end of their rope, this was the thing that shifted them. And I didn't show up and challenge myself to be that 1% better today. So I didn't reach that person. I think that is what drives me. That's the fear of not reaching that potential that I heard so often as a little boy.
When you're operating in your day-to-day life, and actually, let's rewind a little bit, because I think this would be kind of practical. Historically, in my journey, there was a lot of missteps. There was a lot of falling back. There was a lot of repeat behavior. There was a lot of really just, it was like I'd be climbing Mount Everest and somehow I'd find myself back at base camp.
Mhm.
Did you have a similar experience as you've gone through this process in your life? And if so, how have you managed to navigate that?
I love the fact that you say base camp. So something I hear in people a lot, and I had to look back at my own journey was specifically when I was working in just the health and fitness space, right? I would get people that would fall off the wagon, whatever you want to call that, would like stop working out, would binge eat, drink too much. And the question people would always ask me is, "Hey, should I just start over?" And I was like, "No." Because this is what happens when we talk about base camp. Let's use the analogy of the mountain. And we start taking some steps up that mountain. And let's say you sprain your ankle. You take a misstep, you sprain your ankle. You don't have to voluntarily roll all the way back down the mountain. You set up you set up camp. First, what you do is you look behind you, go, wow, some bitch. I've actually come up this mountain a little ways. Why would you voluntarily walk all the way back down the mountain? But that's what we do in our heads. We think, oh, every time I try to change my life, Jimmy, every time I try to get in shape, every time I try to start a business, this is what happens. I get a week in and I fall off the wagon. I get 2 weeks in or I get injured. I get this far in and, I have a really toxic environment. And some days I show up and some days I don't. And I start over. But every time we go back down to the bottom of the mountain, we voluntarily go all the way back down to the bottom of the mountain. That mountain gets bigger. And we start identifying ourselves with this is what I do. That's the story that we buy into is this is what happens every time I try to change. Well, what I'm going to encourage you to do is instead of voluntarily going back down the mountain, there is no mess up. There is no perfect way. You're going to have bad days. You're going to have days you're like, ah, shit, I drank too much that night. I have a hangover today, or I ate wrong, or my mindset was crap, or I didn't show up, or I haven't really invested in my mindset or something for days now, and I snapped at somebody, and I've been in a funk. Cool. The fact that you recognize it is a step, and just pause, regroup, and then we step back up the mountain instead of this idea of starting over every time.
Yeah, and I think there's so much space for grace in it. Like, we dude, I'm gonna tell you, like, over a decade into this, like, I still make mistakes all the time. I still look at decisions I make and I still go, okay, cool. I learned something about who I am today while still simultaneously trying to move towards the goals that I have, still trying to build the life that I want to have. And it's so easy to get caught up in destroying yourself. And I tell people all the time, you're so mean to yourself in your own head that if you said that shit to me, I'd punch you in the face.
Oh my gosh. And you know what? I love the fact that you said that because whoever it is that you look up to at the moment, right? It's so easy for us to think these people that we look up to, and I think it's great to have role models. We think they have it all figured out. There is something right now they're struggling with just as, and it was crazy as I've met people that I look up to or have been mentors and stuff of mine. You know what I've found out is there is stuff that I do really well that some of them struggle with. They look at once they become friends or once I've met them and they're like, "Hey, how do you really execute in that way?" And I'm like, "Wait, why are you asking me? Like you're the person." And we each have you may be looking at somebody that has figured out something where you struggle, but trust me, you got something under wraps that they struggle with as well. There is no cruise control in life. There isn't this I've arrived, now I get to put it in neutral and just coast. You will always be struggling with something. You will always be pushing against something. And again, it goes back to and you have to be okay with that. Instead of going, gosh, what's wrong with me? It's called being a human being. And it's part of falling in love with the process.
Yeah, 100%. And I think it's so true. It's incredible as I've got closer to mentors that I have in my life, and I'll totally mimic what you just said. It's incredible to me when you realize, like, they're trying to figure shit out too. They have mentors and they have
Mm.
right? And it's one of those things. I want to shift gears here for a moment because I'm really curious about something. There are people right now listening who think to themselves, "Well, I have a message. I have a mission. I want to talk to people. I want to get on stages. I want to be on podcasts." They have a dream of trying to step into trying to create something in regard to what we've created for ourselves, and they're stuck. Jimmy, what do you do, man? I'm stuck. I want to do this, but I'm stuck. Where do I start?
It's embracing being bad before you're good. And man, I love the fact that you brought this up. I was teaching a workshop the other day. At the end of the workshop, we're going through and building out people's stories to have an impact in the world. And I said, the person that goes and messes this up first wins. And it's because you don't get to be good first. I told you, like, one of my first auditions ever in college, I was so nervous that I, like, physically shook. Like, I would look at my hand and this leg, and it felt stupid. I'm like, "Stop." It couldn't. Yet I knew I was designed to do this, but I'm like, my body was betraying me at the time. And I had to be bad first. And I think in this social media world or whatever we come to, we think, "Man, you know what? As soon as I'm good at this, then I'll put it out in the world." And it just doesn't work that way. You can't get good without willing to be bad. And so for that person that says, "Man, I know I have a message. I wanna get on stages. I wanna be on podcasts." Start showing up when you have 2 views. Start going live and sharing that story. You got to make it messy. You just have to be bad and just continue to show. I look at early videos of mine and I'm just like, "What was I doing?" Or DMs of trying to, reach out to people or start a business, and I was like, "I was really bad at this." Thank God. I had to. And think of it this way, the faster you go embrace the bad portion, the faster you can get past it. But if you're just waiting to like, "Okay, when I feel better about this, when I'm confident about it, when I'm good at it," that so every time you don't take action, you just stay in your head, that monster gets bigger. That fear gets bigger. And when you step into it, you realize, number 1, it wasn't as bad as you thought it was gonna be. And even if it does kinda suck and you're like, "That was pretty embarrassing," then you're past it. Then you got going. So you gotta go take action. We all do it. Every time, like, the next phase of my life is, I pause and I'm like, "Damn it, Jimmy, like, you've been through this before. Just go be bad at this." Or we go, "Oh, somebody else is doing it better. Oh, I wanna step into this area or speak on this, but there's already people in that area, or there's already people in those businesses." Right, but none of them have your story, and none of them are executing exactly the way you are, and I get really passionate about this because I fell into that trap for a really long time thinking, "Well, there's other people that already do what I do. They're gonna pick the person that I consider famous or that I look up to," when I realized half the world doesn't even know the people that I look up to in my same space as well. Same thing about you, right? It's just like, cool, there's other people in our space that may have bigger audiences or, you know, a higher net worth at the time or wherever you wanna rank somebody. I don't know, whatever you deem makes them successful, but that doesn't mean you can't help people, and all we have to do, we don't have to be the expert. We just have to be, like, 2 steps in front of the people we're talking to, and we're still adding value and allowing them to learn from us.
And I love what you said. You have to be willing to be bad. And you know, it's funny, Jimmy. You see me the first time speaking on stage. You're hosting. I'm there. Thousands of people watching. You didn't see me in front of 2 people at a
Yeah,
stand-up comedy joint while I was trying to figure out how to do that. You didn't see me in Bali in a room full of 9 people doing my first presentations. You didn't see me in the first podcast when nobody listened and I was under a desk with a blanket over the top of my head because I didn't have all the things.
right.
That's the reality.
Yeah,
That's the truth about it. Like, you want something, we all start at one step. We all start at that very first thing, and the failure, which is inevitable, I promise you it is coming, is going to be the most incredible data that you have because you're gonna be able to take those things and you're gonna leverage them and you're gonna learn about who you are, and you're
yeah.
gonna understand things better than you've ever understood them. What do you think is the biggest failure that has taught you the greatest lesson in your life?
I don't know if it's the biggest. I fail every damn day. Like, I literally it's not I remember I one time I was at this event and I was talking to this guy backstage and he's like, "Yo, Jimmy," He's like, "What was the thing that shifted your business? What made it take off? What was the big thing?" And I'd never had anybody ask me that, and I paused and I was like, there was no big moment. In fact, some of the decisions that I look back on that made the biggest difference seemed really it didn't seem like a big deal at the time, right? It wasn't this huge epic thing. There wasn't this huge epic failure. It was messing up every day. Like, literally, I can tell you at the end of the day, there's very few days where I'm not like, I'm proud of myself. In fact, I think it's really important to acknowledge, our the things we do well, like our little steps, but there's something I wanna redo every day, so I don't know that it's, like, the biggest failure. It's just like, "Cool, what coulda gone better today?" And when we're talking about failures, I do wanna touch real quick on this idea of celebrating the wins. So, people that follow me on my Instagram account, right, I share quite a bit of, my workouts and stuff because it's just what I do, and for me, I think fitness is a great, analogy for so many things in life. And people will watch, and when I get done with the set or whatever I'm doing, I have this little thing, like a little pat on my leg, and I've had people reach out like, "Okay, Jimmy, I've been watching you a while. What's up with the leg pat?" And I was like, "Oh," and I remembered where it came from. So I was listening one time to, it was a sermon. There's a pastor named Stephen Furtick out of, Elevation Church in North Carolina, I believe, and he was talking about how he can be really hard on himself about the things he doesn't do right, and he was talking about how he's taking tennis lessons, and he's taking tennis lessons, and he keeps, like, yelling at himself. He's just like you were talking about, like, talking really negative to himself, and his coach goes, "Look, I understand why you're frustrated and the things that you're struggling with, you are struggling with, but you have a really good forehand, but you never seem to, like, acknowledge it." And he's like, "Yeah," but he's like, it was the thing that kinda came naturally to him, like, this part of his game worked. He's like, "Yeah, I don't wanna make a big deal out of it." He's like, "I don't need to, like, bow up because my forehand was good." He's like, "No, but you need to acknowledge the things that you do well." And he's like, "Yeah, but I don't need a big Tiger Woods fist pump." And he's like, "No, no, no, we're gonna find something." And what they came up with was just he's like, "Next time that you do something good on he's on the tennis court." He's like, "It doesn't have to be big, doesn't have to be grandiose. Just just pat yourself on the leg." And for whatever reason, that story really resonated with me, and I was like, "I don't do that enough." I tend to focus. It's really easy with all my mindset work. It's still real easy to feel, what haven't I done? What didn't go right? It's just human nature is what we do. So now you'll see me come off the stage. Like, I'll speak, keynote, MC, and I've had people notice that because now it's ingrained in me. It's like almost second nature. Is this little pat of just like, cool, good job. Because I feel like that's important too. We focus so much on where we will always have something to work on, but we got to acknowledge the things that we did well today. It is this balancing act.
Yeah, it entirely is. And I think that those small acknowledgments, it's the same as this compounding effect we're talking about. Those carry weight because it's the little thing. Like I swear to God, dude, it was me making my bed for the
Mhm.
first time at 24 years old, 25 years old, that led to now it's a daily habit. It's a practice. It's something that I do that fulfills me every single moment of every day. Cause I'm like, when I have organization in my life, it feels like I'm living in a way that is in alignment with me. And that matters. Knowing who you are, trusting that you're making the right decisions for yourself, doing difficult things, and giving yourself a little fucking love is not the worst thing that's going to happen in your life.
No, you need it. We all need it. And surround yourself with some people. I think it was that idea when I got plugged into like a community, two things. People that believed in me before I believed in myself, and being willing to take a little like feedback and a little things that it's not like, oh, there is a balancing act there too, because we can be our own worst critic and we need somebody to come along and be like, hey, you're doing good, like in some encouragement. And then also be open to somebody going, hey, I know you can play bigger than that. I know you can be more consistent. I know you can show it more powerfully than what you're doing and not get butt hurt over it and super defensive because somebody what I found out the best mentors in my life, whether that was musically, acting, business, fitness, are these people that don't just always tell me you're the best. It's this balance of encouragement, but then they're on me and they're on me because they see greatness in me. They see where the levels could go and they don't want me to cheat myself out of that. And it wasn't until I started to embrace that instead of push back against it. That's human nature to get defensive, to be like, oh, wait, like to well, I was just or justified or whatever, and just think about it, receive it, and go, man, there may be some truth to this. And I know they are doing it to judge me. They're not doing it because, you know, they're attacking me. They're pointing this out because they see something great in me and they don't want me not to be able to experience that level that they see the potential of me in.
Yeah, I love that. One time after I won this contest, Grant Cardone told me, "You need to take your flowers." And that means sometimes you just need to sit in what's happening and acknowledge it and not combat it and not fight it and not try to push it away, but let it exist because whether it's this small little bit of criticism that I think is important or a little bit of praise, like that starts to hold weight and carry weight with you as you go. Jimmy,
Mhm.
this conversation, my friend, has been incredible. But before I ask you my last question, can you tell everyone where they can find you?
Yeah, absolutely. This is what we're gonna do. Okay, I told you about those videos in the morning, right? So I started sharing those on my Instagram story, and I started having people go, "Hey, can you just send me what you're listening to in the morning?" And I'm like, "They're not all my videos. They're just stuff you can find on YouTube." They're like, "That's okay. I just want to listen to whatever you're listening to start your day. You're getting results." So what I did is I set up a text service. So what I would love for you to do, and I answer, like, you can ask me questions and stuff, but I will send you in real time. I don't schedule this. You'll know when I wake up every morning. Whatever I'm listening to every morning, I will send to you. You just need to go to textcoachjimmy.com and text me the word unbroken. Textcoachjimmy.com, text me the word unbroken, and I will send you the exact same thing I start my day with every day.
Amazing. I'm gonna text that. I'm gonna do that because I want to know too. Because I'm always about optimization, and I'm like, if I don't try it and prove the hypothesis that maybe it works for me too,
Yeah.
then it's gonna bother me. So I'm gonna do that. I love it. I think those videos are incredible. My last question for you, my friend, is what does it mean to you to be unbroken?
To be unbroken is to scrape yourself, is to get broken the day before and show up the next day. The fact that we woke up today, there is so much grace in that. I can think of all the things that I messed up yesterday, the things I said, the stupid stuff I did. And to be unbroken means you have an opportunity the next day to get up and dust yourself off and keep moving. The only difference between successful and unsuccessful people is not that we don't get broken, is not that we don't mess up, but this is what I realized. Successful people just acknowledge it and get right back on track. It takes just as much time and energy to feel bad for ourselves, to wallow in it, to judge ourselves, to go isolate and hide in the corner and then let that compound as it is to go, damn it, man, I messed up. I totally messed up. Cool. What I'm gonna do about it? Let me get right back on track. How do I dust myself off and how do I correct this quickly so it doesn't compound? And to me, that's what being unbroken is just acknowledging it, taking 1,000% ownership for exactly where you are and where you messed up, and then go, cool. I'm gonna fix this today to the best of my ability and get right back on path. And that's what it means to me.
Brilliantly said, my friend. Unbroken Nation, thank you so much for listening. As always, please like, subscribe, comment, share, tell a friend. And until next time, my friends, be unbroken. I'll see ya. Thank you so much for listening to Think Unbroken. Please share this episode with someone who could use it and help us move forward in our mission of ending generational trauma in our lifetime. And if you would, please take 5 seconds to pop on iTunes or Spotify, hit that 5-star, leave a review, and you can also reach out to us on social at Michael Unbroken or at Think Unbroken. And of course, you can check out our YouTube channel at Think Unbroken. Thank you for being a part of Unbroken Nation, my friends, and until next time, be unbroken. Hey, my friends, we will be right back to the show. But I have a question for you. Are you struggling with the impact of childhood trauma? Well, know that you're not alone. I'm here to let you know that I'm starting a brand new weekly coaching group that includes a year of live coaching, accountability, support, habit and goal setting, and more. I'm starting a waitlist for the group right now, and I'm only taking a handful of people. And I'll let you know that through this personalized coaching, we'll work together to help you understand how your childhood trauma has shaped your beliefs, behaviors, emotions, and will help you create a roadmap for healing and growth. Right now, you can schedule an absolutely free coaching session with me and get put on the wait list if you go to thinkunbroken.com. My friends, it's your time to turn your trauma into triumph, breakdowns into breakthroughs, and become the hero of your own story. And I'm here to support you in doing that. Just go to thinkunbroken.com to register for a free coaching call with me and to get put on the wait list for the brand new weekly coaching program.